We'll give about 1 more minute for people to join in. All right, let's get started. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the executive panel session at the Holy Cross Women in Business Conference. My name is Grace Ingram. I'm a senior history major and co-chair of the Women in Business Committee. It's been a pleasure to work alongside these incredible women to bring forth this panel today. We have an exciting discussion ahead, and we hope you enjoy. Patricia Forts is a member of the class of 1981 and was a sociology major. She currently serves as Deputy Chief of Innovation and Strategy at Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, where she leads corporate initiatives to drive growth and diversification strategy for the organization. Prior to joining Harvard Pilgrim 4 years ago, Patricia served as Vice President of Business Development at Fallon Health. Judi Gonsalves is a member of the class of 1994 and was an economics and accounting major. Judi now serves as Chief Internal Auditor at Liberty Mutual Insurance, where she manages a team of around 85 US-based and 60 internationally based audit professionals and oversees the development and execution of the annual audit plan. Prior to joining Liberty Mutual 12 years ago, Judi had a 14-year career at Ernst & Young. AnnMaura Connolly is a member of the class of 1986 and was a political science major. She has worked at City Year for over 20 years and currently serves as Chief Strategy Officer and Executive Vice President, where she oversees and works to expand opportunities for young people to serve across the United States and around the world. In addition, she oversees City Year's international work, public policy, and public affairs. She also serves as president of Voices for National Service, a coalition of service organizations that work together to advance citizens' service policy. Moderating the panel is Susan Crawford Sullivan, professor of sociology and chair of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at the College of the Holy Cross. She received her master's in public affairs from Princeton University's School of Public and International Affairs and her MA and PhD in sociology from Harvard University. She has academic interests in religion, poverty, public policy, and community-based learning. Thank you all for joining us today, and without further ado, I'll now turn it over to Professor Crawford Sullivan to begin the discussion.
Thank you, Grace, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And I especially want to thank our 3 panelists who have put time aside today to come and share some of their wealth of experience and how their Holy Cross how their Holy Cross experience has shaped their career in business. So I guess we'll start thinking back to Holy Cross, asking how and why, maybe Judi, we'll start with you, how and why you chose to attend Holy Cross, and while you were there, what shaped your experience? What were you involved in at Holy Cross?
Sure, thanks, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I had my heart set on a Jesuit school known as Boston College, actually, before I visited Holy Cross. And my grandfather had gone to Holy Cross, class of 1932. And my mother really wanted me to go to Holy Cross. She decided that it would be a good idea for us to start looking at colleges junior year of high school. And we did that during April vacation. And the Monday of April vacation in Boston is Marathon Monday. So Boston College was closed. So she sort of strong-armed me to say, let's just look at Holy Cross. The decision will be yours, but I just want you to see it. I just want you to take a look. As soon as I set foot on campus, Boston College just sort of became an afterthought. We did visit Boston College, but going to Holy Cross on Monday and BC on Tuesday, there was just no comparison for me personally. The small school atmosphere, and just the beauty of the campus and the friendliness of the students were the things that really kind of tipped the scales for me. So I pushed my chips all into the middle of the table for Holy Cross, and began my career at Holy Cross way back in 1990. And in terms of the things that really shaped my experience there, I would say the friendships that I made and people that I still talk to, principally mostly on social media now because we have such busy lives, but I do have quite a few alums in the Boston area that work at Liberty Mutual and that worked at Ernst & Young that I still keep in touch with. So it was really the people, as well as just the quality of the education and, that really well-rounded education of being a liberal arts school was really something that I had been looking for and has definitely helped me throughout my entire career.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Judi. AnnMaura, what if we turn to you with the same question? What brought you to Holy Cross and what did you dig into once you got there?
Well, thanks so much for including me today. It's really an honor to be part of this panel. And of course, anytime Holy Cross asks anything of me, I say yes immediately. My family has a very long history. More than 20 folks in my family actually have gone to Holy Cross, starting with my grandfather, very early 1900s, including both of my siblings. My brother Jim was in the class of '84 and my sister Mary was in the class of '89. So Holy Cross was not out of the realm of possibility when we started looking for me for college. I did visit other schools, but the minute I drove through that gate, I knew I was home. And it really didn't have anything to do with the fact that my family had such a long history there. It really just was a feeling of coming home. Driving up that through the gates and up that hill, I just knew immediately that I was in the right place. And I really, I sort of fell in love with it on that very first visit. I'd been before to visit my brother, but that my own sort of exploration that took me there that day just really opened my eyes to all the possibilities for me. It really wasn't just, something that many of my family members had done, but I really felt like it was the right place for me. So it was an incredible 4 years. And when I got there, I dove in immediately and signed up for everything I could possibly sign up for and just threw myself wholeheartedly into campus life and never looked back. And it's been just a remarkable launching pad for me in my career and in my life. And, as I'm sure is true of all of us, and Judi just alluded to this, my Holy Cross friends are my very best friends to this day. And I'm just super grateful to have had the chance to be part of the Holy Cross community all these years.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Patricia? Oops, I think you're muted.
No, I practiced that. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here today and really grateful for the many people who are joining us for this panel, given the beautiful day it is out there, at least here in New England. So I wasn't going to go to Holy Cross. There was nothing that could make me consider Holy Cross. My father was the class of '41. Very proud alum and wanted nothing more than to have a child go to Holy Cross. And his first daughter was born too soon. My sister's pretty much, I think she's 13 years older than I am. So there were no women at Holy Cross back then. So I was his only hope and no sons. And so whenever we went to visit a college, we stopped at Holy Cross on the way, even if the college was in New York or another state. So fortunately for him and for me as well, when I did come to Holy Cross, I fell in love with it and really realized it was the right place for me, much like Judi and AnnMaura have said. Just setting foot on campus, seeing the campus, feeling and experiencing the student life there changed my perception. I was also challenged by the fact that a boy in the class a year ahead of me in my high school didn't get into Holy Cross. So the guidance officers were pretty sure I wouldn't either. And that sort of became a little bit of a challenge that I wanted to prove I could get in. When I was at Holy Cross, much like the others, I got involved in as many things that I could. It's where I really discovered social justice work. And so Abby's House, being a big sister, working in the Worcester community really became an important part of my college experience. And I'll just mention that I still have my little sister from Holy Cross. She turned 48 this week. I've had her for 43 years.
Wow. That might be a record, huh?
I was wondering if it might be. Also makes me sound very old.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I mean, I guess I'm curious how for all of you, how your liberal arts education, how you brought it with you to your business career, how it impacted your professional career. Maybe did it set you apart from your peers in any way? I mean, you didn't attend a business school, but yet you've had these long careers and very prestigious careers in business. So how did your liberal arts education play into that? Maybe, AnnMaura, can we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the two big things I think of when you ask that question were the critical thinking skills that I learned at Holy Cross, which were just sort of fundamental to my education there, but everything I've done since. That is sort of, it sounds like a basic skill, but it is something that I think is not necessarily found everywhere. And the second is that I learned how to write at Holy Cross. I spent a lot of time, I was a political science major, so I spent a lot of time writing papers and obviously exams, and got some really critical feedback. Sometimes felt kind of harsh, but really was helped me shape my writing style. And that's been just sort of a hallmark of everything that I've worked on professionally has started with sort of the critical thinking and the writing skills that I got at Holy Cross. But I think also the kind of ethical grounding that you get there, really sort of embodying the men and women for others, thinking about every decision you make, who it impacts. To me, that really has been fundamental to the way I think about my work. And I think has been, in some ways, set me and of course other Holy Cross grads as well apart from folks who may not have had the opportunity to have that kind of integrated approach to education, really thinking about the sort of ethical base of it. And then of course the skills of the critical thinking and the writing to help bring to life your point of view. So for me, those were sort of the main things that I got out of my Holy Cross education.
That's great, thank you. Patricia, how would you answer how you came from a liberal arts path of study to a long career in business?
So I listened, I joined the keynote this morning, and Stephanie did a phenomenal job talking about this as well. And one of the things that she mentioned that really resonated with me was she quoted David Chu, "From any major to any career." And I loved that because I really do think, a lot of times if you go to a school for business or you go to school for a specific career, you stay in that career for the rest of your life. Whereas the value, I think, of our liberal arts education is the exposure that we had to so many different aspects of life and of learning, from philosophy to religion to math to writing, and we're able to strengthen and sharpen those skills. So that really resonated with me. Another thing that comes to mind is an experience in my own career where when I started out in my career, I started out as a human resources person. And I ended up doing a lot of the writing for the CEO at one of my jobs, ghostwriting and board writing and other work for the CEO. And so when a position opened up in the company for the head of marketing and communications, very suddenly in the midst of a rebrand, he asked me if I would fill in temporarily. And I thought about that. It was really a career-defining moment for me. I made the transition out of human resources and into more strategic and business-focused work at that point. But I really do think it was this liberal arts background, this ability to think broadly, to communicate on various levels, whether writing or in person, that allowed me to be considered even to step into a role that I had no training or background for. And I did it for a year. I loved it. I was very sad that he held to his commitment that it was only an interim role. It was the right thing to do, hire someone with that background and experience. But I think Holy Cross positioned me well to be able to step into that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Judi?
Sure. Yeah, my answers are very similar to AnnMaura's experience. Operating with ethics and integrity is true of any job, but especially in internal audit and even in the external audit field. So for me, that was a critical piece of things, of my background and experience from Holy Cross. The writing skills have definitely helped me tremendously throughout my career. You think about accounting, and it's like, really, how much writing can there be? But you'd be surprised when we're talking about technical accounting positions and really being able to cite research and put it together in a way that anybody can follow. And a lot of that speaks to the critical thinking skills that both Patricia and AnnMaura talked about. And then when I transitioned over to Liberty Mutual 12 years ago, I gained some additional responsibility within the first couple of months. I had written a couple of memos and they were recognized as being well done. And so I had a whole bunch of new responsibility to be in charge of our quarterly documents that we produce. We're not a public company, but we do have quarterly disclosures similar to a public company. And so, when my boss called me in to talk to me about it and said, okay, you're going to take this over. I said, oh, okay, next year. And he's like, no, today. And I was like, okay, all right, well, let's get started. And so all of the things that I learned and I took a couple of history classes right out of the gate when I got to Holy Cross from Father Kazneski, and he taught me a lot about proper grammar and proper writing, things that I still think about to this day, God rest his soul. So I appreciate all the learnings that I had at school.
Well, actually, that ties into another question. I don't know if, you mentioned Father K, and I don't know if there are any mentors or Holy Cross mentors that you could speak to for how they've influenced your life, or are there any core messages, or it sounds like even core skills that you bring, from them and carry with you, to this day. Patricia.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind when you ask about mentors, specifically at Holy Cross, are the faculty that I really had the chance to work with and study with and learn from, and particularly in my major of sociology. I think of Dr. Swigert comes to mind right away, and Roy Singleton and others who, as a sociologist,
I know them.
You'll know them as well. Yes. And I think, too, of some of the experiences that I had with them, some of the opportunities that they provided to, with some of our classes, we actually went into the city of Worcester and did research and did studies right there on the ground, on the streets. And I just think of those opportunities as being really meaningful and really shaped my understanding of the world beyond the world I had grown up in or the world I knew at Holy Cross. And I try to take those lessons with me as I move about both my work and my personal life, to really think about others, their backgrounds, where they come from, what experiences they may be going through or living through, especially now in terms of the pandemic. It's a hard time in the workplace and in people's personal lives. And I try to always remember that and think about that as I move through my days.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. AnnMaura.
So I had, as a poli-sci major, I had so many incredible teachers that I could spend the whole panel talking about. But I actually want to talk a little bit about a figure, a well-known and beloved figure, Father LeBrand at Holy Cross, just something really interesting that I think of him all the time, and the joy that he brought to the work that he did. And it makes me think about how we all do that, right? And how we all should try to find the joy in the work that we do. And I remember that infectious smile and his Yahweh, and he was such a big figure on campus. So lots of incredible teachers, but that sticks out in my memory as somebody that I wanted to really try to find a way to emulate as I pursued my career, to really try to find the joy in every day and to share that with other people.
Mm-hmm. Great. Judi.
Yeah, for me, I would say, the accounting professors were obviously instrumental in helping me build my skill sets. And, as if I got a little bit discouraged, just encouraging me not to give up. This is a career that you can handle and you can do it. I think what's interesting is the impact that we have on professors as well, which I really didn't appreciate until I had seen Professor Scott Sandstrom at a Red Sox game, of all places, in Boston. I don't know, probably 15 years after I graduated. He had gotten in touch with a friend of mine, and so we all met up to have a drink before the game. And he said, "Oh, I remember you." And I said, "Oh, I didn't believe that. As a professor, right, Susan, you have hundreds and hundreds of students, And so when he told me where I sat in the class, I said, okay, they really are amazing people to really keep track of all of that. And so that really impressed upon me that sort of need for connectivity and that desire to, to make a mark on someone's life and to be able to recall those kinds of things in the future. I was always very impressed with that.
Thank you. Well, just kind of shifting, thinking about the workplace, how the workplace maybe has changed since you entered it from Holy Cross. You all have come to started your business careers at slightly different times, and how have things changed, and specifically how have things changed for women in your professions? Maybe Judi, we'll start with you since you're the most recent away from Holy Cross.
Sure. Yeah, I think the workplace has changed so much in the last 20-something years. I don't want to talk about my age either, but when I first exited college and went into the working world, it was suits, formal, 5 days a week, and not an awful lot of support for working moms. Now, I'm not a mom myself, but I have worked with tons and tons of them throughout my career, and wanting to be supportive of trying to have that balance between work and home, and it's incredibly difficult. I think the transition that we've seen over the course of my time in the working field has been just exponential in terms of support for women, promotion of women, sponsorship of women, women's professional networks and other like employee resource type group scenarios, so that women can seek out other women. For me, I experienced a lot of that in my career, especially in the early days, looking up at who is the leadership, and it was all mostly white men. And so, while that wasn't an issue for me, it can be an issue for a lot of people to be able to seek out other women, to have that support and that network, and to be able to talk about issues that are common for all of us.
AnnMaura.
So I would be remiss if I didn't start with just a reflection on, the news of today. Senator Harris being the vice president-elect, I think that says a lot about how far we've come. And of course, the work that I've done for most of my career has really been centered around Washington. And when I graduated from Holy Cross in 1986, there were only 25 women serving in the US Congress. And today, in the last Congress, there were 127. So I think we've come a long way in terms of women's voices, women's presence in the places where decisions are made. And I think a lot about Justice Ginsburg, who of course we just lost, and her famous quote, which I'm sure I'm not going to get quite right, but that women belong everywhere the decisions are made. So I think there's just been an incredible evolution. It's certainly in the work that I do around making sure that women have a seat at the table, and now importantly that women of color have a seat at the table. So I've definitely seen in my work the emergence of a lot of very strong female leaders who are not afraid to speak their mind and to bring their full selves to the work that they do in Congress, in state houses, and now in the White House. I think it's a pretty exciting set of developments, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Senator Harris, Vice President-elect Harris, paves the way for other women in the highest office of the land.
Thank you. Patricia.
Yeah, similarly, I have noticed an awful lot of change from the time when I joined the workforce back in the 80s, the early 80s. It was, at the time as a young mother, one of my goals was to make being a mother as innocuous as I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want it to be disruptive. I didn't want to make a big deal about it. I slipped out for a very short maternity leave and returned to work sort of under the cover of darkness. As a breastfeeding mother, I can't even tell you the challenges I faced there. And I imagine others, I had an office, at least at the time, I imagine others had even more of a challenge. And there was a group of us that formed a little working mothers committee. And we tried to think of ways that we could support one another as we dealt with the challenges of daycare, sick children, two working spouses, just what they all felt like very new issues at the time. They probably weren't as new as we thought they were, but they were a lot different than today where those things are, I think, more celebrated. And certainly, at least within my organization, and I know many others, women receive so much more support as parents and in their roles. And again, I'll reference this morning's keynote speaker. Stephanie talked about leadership competencies. Women actually score higher on many of the most important critical leadership competencies, including empathy, integrity, honesty, and resilience. And I don't think anybody would have acknowledged that or applauded that when I joined the workforce back in the 80s. And I think now we really realize those are critical skills, critical competencies, critical aspects of the work we do as leaders. So I think it's exciting, but a lot of changes in the years.
Thank you so much. While we're thinking about women in the workplace, I guess we're thinking about 2020 being a very tumultuous year with the pandemic, and much has been written about the gendered impact of the pandemic and what it's meant for women in particular trying to balance work and family while children are out of school or other disruptions are going on. How have your companies, how have you seen that in your organizations? How have they tried to accommodate it? Let's see. Maybe Patricia, we'll start with you again.
Sure. I have to say, I work at Harvard Pilgrim. We're a nonprofit health insurer serving, the New England states. We actually have a national presence as well. But we were able to pivot pretty easily because a lot of the work that we do is administrative in nature, claims and actuarial and underwriting and those types of things. And our CEO, right from the start, said family work-life balance is critical. And I think our chief HR officer also reinforced that in pretty much every decision that we made. And I can remember vividly the CEO saying, I'm okay if our customers see you on the phone and your child needs you and you turn to them, or your dog jumps up and starts barking, or some other aspect of family life interferes. I think everybody needs to recognize we're in extraordinary times. We all have lives, and our home lives are really important, as are our work lives. So we've gotten an awful lot of support, and that came right from the top, that communicating how important it was that we be open to all that everybody's dealing with. So we have managers and executives who have flexible schedules now because the mom will take the kids in the morning and the dad will take the kids in the afternoon. So they may work from 12 to 8 p.m. instead of the traditional work day. We've implemented a number of policies and programs to support everyone from, now I can't think of any specifics, but parenting, resilience, mindfulness training, online exercise classes that are free, all sorts of different programs. I think every day I could choose from 4 or 5 different programs that Harvard Pilgrim offers to employees. And they've extended it to the community as well, which is neat.
Thank you. AnnMaura, how about its city year?
So city year's been extraordinary, and not a surprise to any of us that work here. I think, I think we've been we're really a global enterprise. And so we have people all over the place and lots of folks that work remote. So the Zoom thing is not necessarily a new phenomenon for us. I will say, I think one really silver lining coming out of this is that I think men have sort of come to realize all the things that women juggle as a result of working from home during the pandemic. You've seen lots of, even on-air reporters and folks on the news media being interrupted by their kids as they're trying to deliver a report, many men included. And I think that's actually been a really good thing for an equalizer, really, for women, to have men sort of realize what it's like to try to juggle all this stuff. And I'm very lucky. I, have a husband who is as committed a parent as I know lots of men out there are, and has always lifted as much as I have in terms of the parenting. But I do think that there is an expectation that women will sort of compartmentalize our lives, and we're not doing that now because we can't. And I think men are realizing what that feels like, probably for many, for the very first time.
Mm-hmm. Judi, what about at Liberty Mutual?
Yeah, very much the same as Patricia and AnnMaura talked about. So I think the only thing that I would add is just the level of connectivity that it has created amongst us. I think, you spend more time with the people that you work with than with your own family in a lot of cases. And, we've had good relationships, no question about that, pre-pandemic, but I think those relationships are far deeper now. Being able to see where people live and, what's behind me and what's going on in the background, as well as those, I don't even like to use the word interruption of either the children or the pets. At the beginning it was hesitation and apologies and, oh, I'm sorry. And now it's, oh, I want to see your child. I want to see your dog, please bring them into the screen. And it offers a lot of levity as well as insights into us as human beings. So from our perspective, a lot of the same things that both AnnMaura and Patricia already talked about with that on top.
Well, oh, that's great to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those experiences. What about your organizations in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? I think AnnMaura, you had also mentioned women of color. Like, how have you seen your organizations or your businesses that you have worked with over the years change in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion? AnnMaura, maybe we'll start with you since you had initially mentioned that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, City Year has always had at the heart of our mission really a commitment to diversity and inclusion. We mobilize diverse teams of young people to go and serve in systemically under-resourced schools, supporting students most at risk of dropping out. So that's always been kind of at the heart of what we do. But I think as an organization, we've really made double down on the commitment to understand our own systemic issues that are making it harder for folks of color to be fully part of our community. And I think that is, it's work that it is ongoing. It's certainly something that we as a leadership team have committed to making sure is central to what we are about this year and beyond. And we've made the commitment to really become an anti-racist organization. So not just on really looking for equity, not just looking for inclusion, but where is there equity in decision making, equity in voice, equity in how we do our work. And so that is absolutely a commitment that made across the organization, but it takes time and it takes work. And we've prioritized really giving people time to do the work that we all need to do to be able to do that, to be able to achieve that goal. And, it's a process and we're learning along the way. And I feel really fortunate to work with an incredible, diverse group of leaders across the country and in 2 other countries. And I learn from them every day on this front. And, I think we've created a space where it's part of the lexicon now. It's what we talk about. We talk about it as much as goals and mission and how much money have we raised. It's really about, are we doing this in a way that is creating equity for our people and for the folks and communities that we serve. So I've seen a really big shift in emphasis this year. I think a lot of folks have who I think were doing good work in this area have really doubled down to try to figure out how do we take this to the next level? How do we really begin to look at the systemic issues, unpack those, and frankly, rebuild in a much more equitable way.
Mm-hmm. Judi.
Yeah, Liberty Mutual is doing so much in this space as well. Probably about 7 or 8 years ago, we started a diversity and inclusion office, as well as a number of employee resource groups for a variety of demographics. And over the course of time, we've seen a little bit of traction, but I think similar to the way AnnMaura described it, we're really starting to double down on that as well. We're going to be getting ready to release numbers in the near term that describe what our current diversity inclusion footprint looks like, and the numbers are not where we want them to be. So over the course of the short and the long term, there'll be a serious commitment to ensure that we're recruiting, but more importantly, retaining talents of both women and people of color. Because diversity is obviously going to help us improve and perform better as a company. So things that, statistics that we could never get our hands on before are going to be out there for people to see, which I think is a fantastic development. A little closer to just my own individual experience, I also have a diversity and inclusion coach who I meet with once a month. And we just talk about a variety of issues. There's really no agenda for the meeting, but it could be something, you read an article or you saw a video or something that's in the news, and really talk about what that's about, what that means, how do you feel about that, as well as helping me to be a better leader in terms of what are the things that I need to think about to ensure that I continue to attract, retain a diverse team for myself.
Mm-hmm. And Patricia?
Sure. There are sort of two thoughts that come to mind with regard to this question. One is, obviously within the healthcare space, we really recognize and understand that there's great disparities in health equity amongst races and for people of color in particular. And so we have a lot of initiatives underway to really begin to understand that better, to understand why it is that way and what we can do to impact and or change that. So there's a lot of work being done sort of on the corporate level with that regard. And then one of the most interesting initiatives that I've been involved in lately through my work in the healthcare innovation space is we have a crowdsourcing platform that we use to have our employees share thoughts and ideas and really draw from them some of their insights into how we can improve or address or tackle different subjects and topics. And we just concluded about a 4-week social and racial justice challenge where we asked our employees, what can we do to better address these issues that we're facing as a company and as a community. And it was really interesting to see the ideas that came from our employee population, and some of them are not surprising around training and education. A lot of desire to share experiences more broadly and to have conversations, really open, candid conversations, and to provide forums where people can exchange these ideas and these experiences so that we can learn from one another. So that's been an exciting opportunity within the organization to hear from our employees and to share ideas with one another and what we can do differently. So a lot more to come, I think, a lot of important work to be done in this space, both for the communities we serve and for the employees that we work with.
Looks like a lot of good work is being done in all of your organizations. Well, I guess thinking back to Holy Cross, and I imagine you or people in your organization have worked with some of our more recent Holy Cross graduates, and I'd just be curious to hear your take on how you think the Holy Cross education, the liberal arts education, is preparing our students. What strengths does it give them? And then is there anything you think we, Holy Cross, could be doing to better prepare our students to come into your businesses and industries? Judi, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. In terms of, we've talked about a lot of those skills already in terms of the critical thinking and the writing skills and the communication skills. I think as younger professionals coming out of school these days, we see a lot more around social justice and the things we just talked about, as well as ensuring that the company that you work for, the values of that company are aligned with what you've learned at Holy Cross and how you feel as a professional and as a young person. And I think those things are far more discussed these days than they were, when I came out of school in the mid-90s. In terms of the skill sets that we're looking for, definitely all of that. And I think, understanding digital tools is where we're spending a lot of time and a lot of focus, and especially sort of upskilling our folks in terms of technologies that are out there that were, didn't exist even probably a year or 2 years ago, and being able to be adaptable and flexible to learn those types of things. And I think, even if the students don't have the specific knowledge of the tools, having that adaptability and flexibility is just super important as the business world continues to change all the time.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. AnnMaura, how do you think Holy Cross is, preparing the current generation of students, and what are we doing well, and what more could we be doing?
Well, I think Holy Cross continues to do a remarkable job of preparing young people for the world of work. And I, to Judy's point about values, really that's at the center of it in so many ways. And it's of course the values of social justice and all of the things that we've been talking about, but it's really also about a work ethic and integrity and really having sort of mindfulness about the work you do and how it impacts others. I have seen this close hand. My niece graduated last 2 years ago from Holy Cross, and I have a niece and a nephew who are seniors and a nephew who's a freshman this year. So we are continuing the family tradition of sending folks to Holy Cross. I also, about a year and a half ago, hired a young woman who graduated a couple of years ago from Holy Cross to be my special projects assistant. She's now operations manager in our office, and she is a remarkable asset to our team. She has brought that can-do, really committed, whatever it takes kind of spirit to the job. And she's been just a remarkable teammate, and in a very short time has made herself absolutely indispensable to our team in really thoughtful ways. And so I would say Holy Cross is doing a magnificent job, and continue the great work on that. I do think that all of us alumni can do more around networking and mentoring. This is a very difficult job environment for young people coming out of school. So keeping an eye out for folks coming out of Holy Cross and really doing whatever we can do to make introductions, to make connections. We all have been at this, for some of us longer than others, and have a wealth of connections that could be of assistance to Holy Cross graduates. So really, trying to find a way to do that matchmaking, I think, would be super important. I, try to do it wherever I can, whenever I can, from, from my vantage point with the connections that I have. But I think I'd be happy to be put in touch with more people by Holy Cross and to help, make introductions and connect them and help them with that networking, which is so essential to sort of getting your foot in the door and getting that first job.
Mm-hmm. And Patricia? How is Holy Cross
Sure.
preparing its graduates, and what else could we be doing?
From my perspective, I see the college doing so much. I've had the privilege of having an intern from Holy Cross for probably 8 or 9 years now. And they always come so well prepared, so enthusiastic, so interested in the work we're doing and in learning and trying or taking on any assignment that's given to them. My most recent intern, I've shared this experience before with others, but one of the things I noticed about my most recent intern was this depth of curiosity that I hadn't really seen before. And I think anything the college can do to continue to foster that. She was willing to ask questions about anything and everything. She really wanted to know and to understand. And I think for anyone entering the workforce, new to the workforce, and even those of us a little more seasoned in the workforce, the willingness to ask questions, to sort of expose yourself, show that vulnerability that you don't have all the answers, it's hard to do. And I don't know if it's harder for women or not. It was hard for me personally, but what I observed in her, I really learned from her. Every meeting we had, she would take notes and follow up. And if there was a term used, an acronym, a description, a project, a program, a business that she hadn't heard of or didn't know, she would ask me about it in a follow-up meeting. And I really admired that. It stopped me in my tracks to think someone who was so willing to say, I don't know everything. In fact, I don't know much about this business, but the only way I'm going to learn it is by asking questions. So I think that's such an important thing to foster: curiosity, that openness to asking, willingness to ask questions. The other thing that I've been involved in that the college has done, and any students on the call, I would say, take advantage of this, is they brought a group of students out to 3 different healthcare employers and 3 different types of healthcare organizations: a lab, an actual delivery system, a hospital, and then Harvard Pilgrim, which is on the administrative claims insurance side. And they spent an hour or 2 with us, and I had my team sit and tell them what we do. What's a day like at Harvard Pilgrim for the strategy and innovation team. And they went to each of these different businesses, and they really had an opportunity to see firsthand and to hear firsthand what people do. Because the work world is, it's the big unknown, I think, unless you've done an internship, unless you've had an opportunity to go to work with your parents. How much do you actually see about what the workday is? And how many of us in our lives have said, I don't want to sit behind a desk all day. I don't want to sit in an office all day. It's not necessarily what it is, although it kind of is now, but it wasn't what it was before the pandemic. There's a lot of movement, a lot of interaction, a lot of sharing of ideas. So I think it's important that we allow people to have these experiences, to talk about these experiences, and to really give exposure where we can. And I think the college is doing that well and should continue on that path.
Great. And then, I don't know, I guess I'm wondering, what did you maybe wish you knew as a Holy Cross student coming into the world of business? Or maybe what advice you would have for a young woman starting off in business today? Judi, is there anything you could think of you wish you knew or that you'd want to tell someone as they're starting off?
Yeah, I think I would give people this, or give women especially, the same advice that my parents gave to me. Now, neither of them attended a four-year college, but gained a lot of wisdom. And they would say, you're starting at the bottom, but you're not going to be there forever. So make sure you learn as much as you can while you have that opportunity, and you're not responsible for anyone but yourself. Always be professional and respectful, and leave everything a little bit better than you found it. And if you work hard and kind of keep your nose clean, good things are going to happen for you. And I've really followed that philosophy my entire career, and it has absolutely paid off. So, I would say the sky is the limit, and is even more so these days. So, approach every opportunity with that same intellectual curiosity that Patricia was just talking about, but approach it with that same can-do attitude, and the world is going to be yours. There's really no limits anymore. And having that enthusiasm is only going to help. And I think another important thing too is to pursue the things that don't make you comfortable. Get out of that comfort zone, because that's really where the learning and growing happens. It can be a little bit painful, but it's definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Patricia.
The first thing that comes to mind is find your voice. Contribute right away from the outset. You might think you're inexperienced or unseasoned or don't know as much as the other people at the table, and I think that that's okay, because even those of us who don't have as much insight into a topic or a situation have something to contribute, even if, as I said, if it's by the questions you ask. So work hard to find your voice and use it, and don't be afraid to, as Judi said, step outside of your comfort zone, and try new things, try different things, and even things that you're not necessarily comfortable with, like speaking on a panel on a Saturday in November to Holy Cross alumni.
AnnMaura.
Yeah, I agree with so much of what's been said. I would also just add, look for women that you would like to learn from and emulate, and ask them to mentor you, and don't be shy about it. I think, so many times folks coming out of school sort of feel like, well, I have to pay my dues and do my thing. I really do think you should follow your dreams, follow your vision, follow your heart, and work will follow. There is that old saying, of course. But there's no reason for anybody to be in a career or a job that they don't like and don't enjoy. And I think there's so many great possibilities out there for women now. And so, look for folks that you admire and try to find a way to get connected to them. The Holy Cross Network, as I mentioned before, is remarkable. And, I think that we all owe a debt of gratitude to the college and to the folks that come on behind us. And so I know that I'm sure that my fellow panelists, and certainly for myself, happy to be of assistance to folks coming out. So please ask. And if I don't know somebody in a certain career or company or place, I'm happy to see if I know anybody else who does. But I think ask, don't be afraid to ask.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, Grace, I think you had a few more questions to add in.
Yes. So the first question I have, discussion question, was submitted via Whova, and the question is, can you share? I guess kind of going off of the last question, Can you share any experiences from your early career that you feel played a key role in you becoming an executive in your respective companies now? And anyone who wants to.
I'm happy to dive in on that one. So years ago, I spent a year as a Jesuit volunteer when I graduated from Holy Cross, and then came back to DC, the DC area where I'm from. And I was working at a nonprofit that at the time was kind of the policy hub for the national service space. It was before AmeriCorps had been created, and folks were working together to try to see if we couldn't get the federal government to invest. And I started there in sort of a special projects events role. I actually hilariously got the job because I had been a Jesuit volunteer, and the guy who hired me was a former priest and knew about JVC. So I had him at JVC. But I started there as an event person, and I got so fascinated by the work. I was really passionate about it that I kept asking for more projects. And the big joke was that when I would get bored, I would invent a new job and they would let me have it. But that really became sort of formational for me to really think about, well, I want to learn more about that part of the work. How can I get myself inserted there? And so I would ask, and they didn't say yes every time, but they said yes a lot, and gave me real opportunities to kind of stretch myself. So again, back to the notion of, sort of pushing and asking, and doing excellent work so that they say, well, she did a good job with that. She'll probably do a good job with that too. So really looking for those things that really pique your interest and asking to find a way to be involved.
I would share my experience where I mentioned earlier that I had the opportunity to lead a team in a field that I really didn't have background or training in. And from that, I learned so much about relying on people who know the business and relying on the people who work for you, valuing their input and their insight and trusting it, and how much that impacts you as a leader. So the ability to really say, I don't know everything about it, you do. So I'm going to hear what you're suggesting and listen to your advice and guidance and parse through it. And I might have the ultimate decision-making authority, but the willingness to listen, to really listen and trust the people that work with you or for you, I think is critical.
Yeah, for me, I would say to be open to different opportunities. Very early in my career, I'd expressed interest in working on startup type clients. And when I'm going to date myself, pulled out my schedule that was printed on a piece of paper because there was no internet yet. When I pulled out my schedule, I looked and I said, this engagement is insurance and it's the largest engagement in the Boston office. All right, well, let me give it a try and see what happens. And, it's 25 years later and I'm still working in insurance. So it was definitely the right choice. And, something that I never would have chosen for myself, but, again, trusting mentors and others who are watching you. And there are people watching all the time and, watching what your skill sets are. And again, that resiliency and flexibility definitely paid off for me. I found a group of people I absolutely loved working with, loved my clients. And then that translated into a job further on down the road. So I would also echo Patricia's comments as well. I've moved into a couple of different organizations within Liberty Mutual and known very little about either the people or the business itself. And so having that courage to admit, I don't know the answer. People coming to me for a decision on the first day, I've said, I don't even know where the bathroom is. How am I supposed to make these decisions? So really relying on those people that work with you and helping pull them up as well to build their skills has always been very important for me.
Excellent, thank you. And one more question from Huva, but I also encourage any of the attendees to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom if they'd like to submit any additional questions. But the question that I have is, well, networking and being able to advocate for oneself are obviously crucial elements in professional growth. What kinds of networking styles do you find effective, and how have you been able to advocate for your own growth and or the professional growth of women around you? And again, and whoever wants to start off by taking it.
I can start with that one. Networking is something that you can never underestimate the importance of. For me, it's been very significant in the moves that I've made in my career. It isn't easy. So I think, recognizing that out of the gate, it's going to make you uncomfortable breaking in and breaking out of a conversation. Going to a networking event with a buddy has always been a good idea for me. You start off so you don't have to enter a room with people you don't know alone. And just striking up a conversation, having a back pocket list of a few just get to know you type questions has always worked for me, and just letting a conversation naturally flow. And if it isn't working, then move on to the next person. I think, taking time to build relationships with the people that you work with is very important. And I've been in the client serving business for a very long time. So for me, it's of even more importance. And that's what really helped me get my job at Liberty Mutual from Ernst & Young, was just the relationships that I had built working on that as a client engagement. So, recognize that it's hard and it's going to be work, but you have to devote time to it. Doesn't always have to be a ton of time, but trying to put some time and carve out some time on your calendar for that is definitely something that will pay off.
Yeah, I would just add to that, there is there can be sometimes a tendency to be sort of transactional when you're thinking about networking, which is really about, I want this job and that person knows that person and they can help me get that job. And I found that if you really focus on the relationship building and trying to get to know the person that you're reaching out to, and it isn't always going to work, but I do think that it's important to sort of avoid being entirely transactional about networking. I think that can be a mistake. And as for, lifting up women, that I've worked with, I look for opportunities to do that. I have a lot of close female colleagues. And B, I look at the next generation and I think about, okay, who's going to replace me? Because I'm not going to be here forever. So how do I help develop the next generation of leaders for our organization and give them opportunities to lead and to learn and to fail, frankly, and to not have to really be committed to being a learning organization, if you're talking about your own organization, and not punitive in terms of if you give somebody an opportunity and they don't quite get it right the first time, how can you help them develop that skill? So really it's about investing in people and relationships more than it is about A is going to get me to B, which will result in C. So I would just encourage folks to think about relationships at sort of the heart of all of this that we've been talking about today.
And Grace, speaking to the other part of your question around self-advocacy, I think finding mentors is really an important thing to do, and being open to coaching too. I always thought coaching was sort of a punitive thing, where you needed a coach because you lacked a skill or an ability. And maybe this is a cultural change, but I think the willingness to accept a coach, to acknowledge I don't know everything about everything. And there's someone out there who can help me sort of identify what areas I can strengthen. For myself, that was a coach when I was an executive at Fallon. We all had executive coaches, and that person's advice was you need to sharpen your business acumen. And here I thought, wow, that's pretty sad if you've gotten this far in your career and you don't have good business acumen. But it turned out to be the best advice I could get. And it really meant I needed to do more reading and learning and looking outside of the organization and understanding the greater industry, not just what we were doing within Central Massachusetts healthcare, but what's really happening on a much broader level within healthcare and health insurance. So I don't know if that falls under self-advocacy, but it's I think I could stretch it too.
That was excellent, thank you. And I'm not seeing any additional questions on the Q&A, so I think we are good to wrap up a little bit early today. I know it's been a long day on Zoom for many people, but thank you all so much for your willingness to participate and your advice and expertise. And to all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining us today for the conference. And hopefully we will see everyone in an in-person conference next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.